We'll go ahead and kick things off today with discussing why it is always important to tell the truth, especially when you're dealing with banks. Now, this past week, the director of the FHFA made headlines when he gave a recommendation to the United States Justice Department to look into possible instances of mortgage fraud committed by the Attorney General of New York State. These are very serious accusations made against very important people. Who's involved here, and what are the ultimate consequences for someone found guilty of mortgage fraud? Letita James was elected the Attorney General for New York State in 2018, really rose to prominence in 2019. If you remember the falsifying of business records case that was brought against President Trump, she played a major role in that. That did take place in New York State. Ultimately, President Trump was found guilty, and the judgment size was in the several hundreds of millions of dollars. That case is under appeal at this point, so we don't have a final verdict. However, fast forward to the election of 2024, President Trump gets reelected. I'm sure that was not the ideal outcome for Attorney General James, because here we are, 2025, and she is under the crosshairs of the United States Justice Department. 3 instances that were brought up that the director of the FHA wants the Justice Department to look into: having a father listed as a spouse on a mortgage application, claiming a 5-unit building as a 4-unit building, and listing a home purchase in Virginia as a primary residence. We'll start with the first one: why someone would claim a father as a spouse on a mortgage application. So it looks like this allegedly took place. There have been no charges at this point. We haven't seen any evidence. Obviously, no one has been found guilty of anything at this point. This is just the information that's out there at this time. Best I can surmise, this first happened in the mid-'80s. She would have been, I believe, in her mid-20s at that point. So why someone would claim a father as a spouse on a mortgage application? Best guess is that if she was looking to use some gift funds from a family member, there's caps in terms of how much a family member can give you for a home purchase, versus if someone is a spouse and a co-applicant, both of your incomes, both of your assets can be used. So I don't have an exact answer as to why someone would do something like this, but I believe it was because most likely at that point in time, she might not have qualified for the mortgage on herself. Having a spouse is going to be more impactful than a co-signer that's a parent or whatnot. So I that would be my best guess, is that the assets under her name weren't sufficient, so that's why she brought in. So allegedly, she listed her father as her spouse on a mortgage application more than once. That's my best guess for why that would happen. This might relate a little bit more to my investor friends out there and investor clients. When we're dealing with financing of multifamily properties, the line of demarcation is from 4 units and 5 units. Anything that's up to 4 units, that falls under your residential financing. 5 and above suddenly turns into commercial. When you get into commercial financing, we're talking you no longer have access to 30-year debt. You no longer have, low down payment options. Interest rates are going to be a little bit higher. Costs and origination fees are going to be a little steeper. So the allegation was that it was actually a 5-unit building that she, on her application, called a 4-unit. The rebuttal I've seen from her attorney is that it's actually under the assessment rules. It is actually a 4-unit, supposedly. It has been rented out as a 5-unit at some point. So it sounds like there's a little bit of gray area in terms of how the building is structured. However, that is a pretty serious change between whether it's a 4-unit or 5-unit. It is going to be much more favorable to be on your 1 to 4 side than your 5-unit plus. So that covers the possible why someone would do that this was a purchase about 10 to 15 years ago in Brooklyn. And most recently, there was a home purchase in Virginia that supposedly on the mortgage application, when asked, is this your primary residence, an investment property, or a second home? She listed it was her primary residence. Now, that's going to be a bummer because I have friends that do long commutes. I'm sure we all have friends and family that do half hour, hour plus. She works in Albany, New York, and that commute would be a little over 8 hours each way. So to make the justification that your home purchase in Norfolk, Virginia is your primary residence, obviously that can't be the case, right? And unfortunately, again, if you are the Attorney General for New York State, you do have a requirement where you do need to live in New York State for your position. So That can't be the case. Why banks care? When they ask you these questions, they aren't doing it just for kicks. There are reasons to why the banks ask these questions. If, for instance, you were to run into financial difficulties, let's say, and you had your primary residence, you had a vacation home, maybe you had an investment property. 9 out of 10 people, if they have to make a decision of which property am I going to pay for, are going to make the payments on their primary residence, the house that they actually live in. So when you mark down on your mortgage application, this property is going to be my primary residence, you then qualify for lower interest rates, lower down payment requirements, because the banks are more comfortable with the fact that, okay, if things should go poorly, this is going to be a very sound investment from the bank's perspective, because this is where she lives. This is where the borrower lives. She's going to do whatever thing she can to make sure that she gets her payments in for this property. So that would be the incentive for someone to say, hey, this is my primary residence, when maybe it's not. It's a little bit suspicious that someone as prominent as the Attorney General for New York State would make such a mistake. And it's not something that could have been done just on her end. I think if it turns out that this was actually, if there was something nefarious that happened here, yes, we want to have a conversation with Attorney General James. We also want to have conversations with her lender, because this isn't something that a borrower could simply pull off by themselves. I mean, these aren't your everyday borrowers. I mean, these are very famous people, and someone that's the Attorney General for New York State telling you they're buying a house in Virginia as their primary residence, somewhere along the lines, there should be red flags going off. So again, these are all accusations, but I think if it does turn out to be true, there's multiple people that need to have, need to be reprimanded for possible malfeasance here.